Let's go to this next story. Speaking of empathy and wokeness. So the EEOC is now being asked to put all gender identity related discrimination cases on hold at its lowest priority. What are your thoughts on that? Will it make an impact on your work? I know it's sad that this is happening for transgender people, just everything that's happening, but also I know the EEOC they weren't already all that effective in doing things. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are.
It matters because it matters not in what I do. The cases we have will be fine. Like the EOC, we do their job for them. But it matters because it's a population that is facing hate every day in every way. And the idea that this is out there as a soundbite, it's going to cause people to not file or to not try to speak to an attorney. And it's going to have cases dying the vine. And 96% of cases already go unreported. We know that, right? We know that. And it could be even higher for the transgender community, for gender identity. And that's where this matters because it creates this belief, mistaken, frankly, that there's no help for you. There's state laws, there's local laws, the federal laws, and the federal EEOC guidance that kind of give those claims life still exist to an extent. And the EEOC putting you in the lowest priority just means you're with the other 98% of their cases that they're not doing, pardon my language, fuck all on, right? So like you're in good company. Don't feel like anything has actually changed. But the problem is most people aren't going to see this video. And the whole world, MSNBC, they're gonna do sound bites like, "Oh my God, there's no help anymore for gender identity issues on the federal level," and like there never was. Functionally, nothing actually changed, but those sound bites are going to keep people from filing. So it's almost like a partisan, bipartisan effort, right? Like everybody's pushing that same sound bite. Like there's no help for you. Nothing actually changed. But that bipartisan soundbite, which serves both parties to rile up their base, creates the problem.
What are the states where gender identity is considered a protected class? How many states are there?
Off the top of my head, I can think of about 10, but I can't give you an exhaustive list off the top of my head.
And then with other states, regardless of whether it's a protected class or not, like, have you made arguments that other rights of theirs have been violated without?
And we've also made those arguments under federal laws with some success. Obama did some work on this front. It's been expanded over time a little bit since him. So there's protections in play. They're not the best. It's not as built out as a racial discrimination claim or a gender discrimination claim. I'm not going to mislead anyone, but there's options, there's leverage, there's help, there's things you can do and ways to fight back and push back.
Yeah. Do you think that people will now, I don't know, I feel like you're so right that not much has changed, because if you like despised trans people and everything that they stood for and you refused to use pronouns, were you like previously hiding and now you're gonna like rub it in their faces that you won't use their pronouns and demote them? Like I feel like you would have maybe already have been doing that in the first place. I don't know, or maybe people will feel emboldened to show their true hatred or like discomfort. I don't know.
I mean, that is part of what we call the Trump bump for employment firms, right? People do feel emboldened and will say things like, we're taking control now. Like our way is the way now. And they'll say horrible things. Frankly, most of those people don't have a ton of exposure to gender identity folks because, you might not choose to work in that workplace anyways if you're transitioning or something like that. But yeah, no, I mean, it'll definitely push more hate. I do agree with that.
Ugh, so sad. But okay, let's move on to our next story. So this is about a CBS settlement. CBS Studios has settled a lawsuit from a script coordinator who accused the parent company of carrying illegal diversity quotas that discriminate against straight white men. This is again a DEI story, and you've always said these stories are coming up every week, and you've always said that it is illegal to say like we're only hiring Black people or like Latino people or we're only hiring women. But that wasn't the point of DEI programs to begin with. It was, or not all of them at least. It was to like open the funnel. But I guess some people were using quotas that made it difficult because I guess they settled with this case.
Yeah, I mean, listen,
listen,
that's
that's
not
not.
that's not me saying that. That's me parroting the old director of the EEOC, who is very clear on that point. You can't have a rule that says no hiring any race. Like that's just kind of obvious under the law. Like you can't do it. You never could since, I mean, the 50s, I guess.
What's
And
interesting about this, by the way, I forgot a point, which is that the backed by Stephen Miller.
wait, say it again. Stephen Miller?
Yeah, the lawsuit is being funded by a group that's backed by Stephen Miller. So do you think we'll see more of those? Like speaking, going back to the whole Soros funding things point, which was not the case, but like different groups, like money just flowing in to fund charged lawsuits that could be good or could be not good, or I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna do that, and it's the same thing essentially that we're doing, just from a different perspective, right? I mean, we're out here laying out lawsuits for protected classes that we want to help. One, because it's profitable, and two, because we want to help. We want to, change the way the world operates. The motivation is the same for them. They make money, they want to make money, and they clearly are. They got a settlement here. They've had a couple of hits recently, as I understand it. And they want to change the way the world works in kind of the opposite way that my firm does. And it's going to keep happening. And the reality is, listen, a bunch of DEI programs were designed by fake DEI experts who didn't have qualifications, didn't maybe even take the time to read or understand the laws, and didn't do things to actually increase diversity in the correct way, representation in the correct way. Instead, they just did this quota, which was facially illegal. And these people are generally not attorneys. They're not subject to malpractice in a way like a doctor or an accountant or a lawyer would be. So they're going to say, oh, you're getting sued. That's too bad. I guess I'll just leave. Thanks for the $500K a year for the past decade. And these companies are going to cut checks. So yeah, they're going to keep going.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like those examples are going to be cherry picked as like, this is why it doesn't work.
Yeah.
But yeah, Stephen Miller just really has his tentacles in everything. I worked on a piece this week for my newsletter. This lawyer contacted us for the one Substack that I do on like tech and power and labor. And he said that there are new guidelines for this IRS whistleblower program. And he thinks that the program is not actually being strengthened to invite in more valid claims. He thinks that this is coming from Stephen Miller, that the administration wants to handicap nonprofits and the philanthropy world by flooding the zone with frivolous whistleblower claims about nonprofits. Because his point was like, nonprofits are inherently, they have to be super transparent. And like, sure, bad stuff can still, you disagree? He was like, because he advises nonprofits, and his point was they have to be transparent, and by like opening up a whistleblower program for more people to make claims about nonprofits, it's going to make nonprofits especially the smaller ones, it's going to be harder for them to defend against claims that don't have merit. And that's part of Stephen Miller's strategy to like basically take down all the pillars that are meant to like check an executive branch. So like the big law firms, the philanthropic world, university and university funding, like Harvard and what Harvard's doing to clap back at Trump. So he was like, the philanthropic world is one pillar that's meant, or one check on the balance of executive power, and that this whistleblower program could potentially like handicap it. But maybe you have thoughts on that.
I mean, do I think they might use it unequally? I absolutely do. Do I think Harvard is a nonprofit organization? I sure don't. Look at their endowment. They're doing just fine. There's an awful lot of profit there. And we'll go kind of neutral here. Red Cross, technically a nonprofit, right? If you look at their executive compensation, though, not a nonprofit, right? And in this country, nonprofit status is used as a weapon to avoid taxes, as a tool to avoid taxes, right? And you have a really, really large build out of that on one side of the aisle, right? There's a lot of nonprofit organizations that support the DNC. There's not a lot of nonprofit organizations that support the RNC. So I do think they're going to unequally apply this without question. I do think that's the goal, but 80, 90% of the nonprofits in this country probably don't deserve that title. And I'm going to go ahead and include Catholic Church. So I'll keep it, Catholic Church, nonprofit, false. That is false, right? And I'll say that as a Catholic, like that is that organization should be taxed, no question, right? Unless you're really giving back, you're really helping people. Are you really a nonprofit? I don't know.
Yeah, it's true. Some of the salaries. I remember actually hearing that Time's Up. Remember Time's Up? They raised all that money to fight sexual harassment from Hollywood and like didn't really do much with it. And there was the scandal around supporting Cuomo and there was one point at which they were sending people to me and I was like, I have a budget of 0 and like you have a budget. And I later found out from a woman who thinks that they're sort of a grifter organization that the executive director was getting paid something like $750,000 a year. So to your point, I see that.
There's a lot of that happens in this industry, right? We have, we'll just call him, the Reverend, without specifying who he is. Occasionally show up on a case, and it's always a really interesting conversation. Wait, you paid him what to do what? Wait, he gets how much? Wait, what are you talking about? He's not. Is he an attorney? Can he have? You're giving him a piece of the back end of your case. What are you talking about? He did one press conference no one showed up to. Like, and it's insane, but it's nonprofit. But it's insane, right? Like, and there's a lot of those.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so speaking of sexual harassment, nonprofits and sexual harassment, there was a study that came out that said that even in Sweden, where there's a ton of gender equality in a lot of these Nordic countries, that doesn't mean that sexual harassment is like less than in other countries where there isn't gender equality. And that's in part because there's still this veil of silence over like being sexually harassed. And it's such a complicated thing. I mean, you and I have both seen between us probably so many like nuanced and also black and white examples of sexual harassment in the workplace and like why people come forward, why people don't, why people wait to come forward. But yeah, it doesn't surprise me necessarily that there still could be sexual harassment in a more equal country because humans are just going to be humans, and it's like whoever is in a position of power and you're working closely together and they, I don't know, there's still always going to be that, like, that human to human thing between some people, regardless of how much equality there is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
we're
mean,
meat
we're meat
computers,
computers,
and the
and
meat
the meat
computer just
computer just
wants to
wants
make
to make
more
more
That's so
meat
great.
meat
computers,
computers.
right? I mean, it's a problem. Like it's I don't think it's ever gonna stop. Um, I've talked with so many guys, like so friends who will describe situations, and I'm like, oh Jesus, that's you sexually harassed that person. No, 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 no. She was on board. She can't be on board. She's your fucking direct report, asshole. Like, that's not how it works. She can't opt in to a power disparity. That's the issue, right? Um, and they'll be like, no, man, you're so off base. But they're not saying it's not flirtation. They're not saying it's not sexual in nature. They're just like, well, it's not harassment. And it's like, well, but it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think people set, going back to Harvey Weinstein, I've seen with men that they set him as this bar, this like low bar, and they're like, well, I'm not that. I'm not Harvey Weinstein. So that's like the new, like, so long as in their minds they can rationalize that they're not Harvey Weinstein, then it's fine. Um, but yeah, it's, and I think a lot of and like the reasons why people don't come forward with things are so complicated as well, right? Like, do I think that every woman should come forward every single time there's like a strange interaction with a guy? Not necessarily. And that's not even in part to protect him. That's just to protect her sanity. Like to use other coping mechanisms of to get through it. But then also there are some things where you do have to report it and like you should. And um it's this interesting like balance of not wanting to walk on eggshells at work but not wanting to be taken advantage of, and sometimes it's hard to know where that line is.
Yeah. And I'll say, listen, I think a lot of times it's the retaliation that drives women to report. Sexual harassment is like the baseline. It's happening to all women at all times, intermittently maybe, but it's happening. And it's the retaliation that drives people to file, to complain. Also, like, I've never seen an attractive male defend it in a sexual harassment case. And it's not because he's attractive. It's because attractive males are less likely to retaliate. Like, they engage in sexual harassment and they get a no thank you. And they're like, well, I'm a Manhattan 10, so I'm going to go find somebody else. And that's how it works, right? But the ugly guys are like, I'm so mad at you. Why don't you love me? And then they do horrible things. And that's where the claim comes from, right? So people are like, oh, women are just happy to be sexually harassed by attractive men. Well, sometimes maybe, but more likely, those men are just like, yo, I'm actually talking to 30 people right now. And this one's, I feel bad about this one, but I'm going to walk away and do the right thing. Cause like, I got a lot of good things in my life.
That is so so true. I think though I will say I've had like I've been I've been sexually harassed by at least one attractive male who I could have done something about. And he didn't retaliate against me, but he like didn't promote me in ways that I think he was like scared of like demoting me or promoting me. So like it was like I was stagnant and stuck because of his paralysis about what to do. Because it wasn't so much that he was like, you know, I like he's a person who had options in the world as like a rich tech CEO. He wasn't even that attractive, but he was attractive. And so but he had options. It's not like he needed to date me, but he so I don't even know if that classifies as retaliation or if it's more like a lack of like career trajectory or growth for me that can be pointed to because of his paralysis and awkwardness about the situation.
Was he also very wealthy?
He now is. He sold his company.
I mean, could be ego, could be the indecision you underline. I don't think I share this with you, but I often feel like I get sexually harassed on your behalf.
What? Tell me this.
So since we started doing this show, I think I got like 30 plus texts from men being like, your co-host, I would love to just go to dinner with your co-host. Maybe we set something up. We can all go. And I'm just like, man, slow down. All right. Like, and obviously I don't visit these upon you, but it's just like, what?
Totally. It's wild. It's wild. And there is something like there's a lot of women talk about like pretty privilege as a concept too, and like what that means both positively and negatively, because there are immense positives and immense negatives. But I think it's a weird topic to like discuss, just because it's sensitive. Because some people are like, why are you complaining? But then other people are like, yeah, it kind of sucks that these are the assumptions that are made about you all the time.
Yeah, I don't pretend to have any insight on that. The decision of when to report and when to complain, and like, it's so personal, and it seems so complex from the outside. But also somebody made the point to me, like, women face so many overtures through the course of their life. If they're actually complaining, the overtures have to be so out of the ordinary or so aggressive or so retaliatory that it like beats out all the other noise. Right. I think that's a great way to look at it.
No, I think that's completely true. And that's why when people do report, even if it's like months later or years later, it can be so like huge because that's the one time they've decided, or the two times that they've decided to talk about it, because it happens so often. Um, anyway, those are all the stories we have for the week. Unless you wanted to talk about something.
No, I was well, I was going to mention something. What was it?
Did the audience have any questions?
No, you know what? They're not posting questions for you. I don't really know. I don't know why. I'm going to prompt them again to post questions for you. People keep posting asking you to do press for them, and I keep being like, no. I mean, you can certainly hire her if you want to have a one-on-one conversation, but like, no, you can ask questions though, and then no questions.
That's funny. Yeah, maybe the questions will come. I'm going to Africa tonight, so on a reporting trip. So that will be, I'm going to look at what's going on with USAID there, which is really like they've been totally cut. Which in some programs and countries, I think that was a good thing. There was waste that was happening, but then in other situations, it's a terrible thing. Like women and children are dying. So I'm gonna go check that out, and going to a number of villages. And this is interesting. When you go to these villages, you're supposed to bring gifts to the people. And I asked the organizer, who's she's a pediatrician and does a lot of work in these countries. And I said, what should I bring the girls? And she said, oh, you should bring them underwear, packs of underwear, because most of the girls there have just one pair or no pairs. So I will be traveling with 70 pairs of underwear in my suitcase, and I will report back.
Wow. Whereabouts in Africa?
Malawi and Mozambique.
Incredible. Are you going in with the view that USAID was a soft power weapon or like a legitimate charity organization?
Probably both. I think that it probably needed to be cut in some ways, But I think that the fact that it's just been abolished is a huge problem. And I think people don't really understand the concept of soft power. Like it has to be like, what is the direct return on investment for Americans? And like they can't like think multiple steps ahead to see how we're all interconnected and like we all like there's a supply chain and there have to be people at the end of supply chains and people who are well and people who are healthy and then also yeah humanitarian work. It's not like we have to be the only country funding humanitarian work, but like that's that should be something that we all care about as just humans on this world. So I think both I come at it with both um, perspectives. And so yeah, I'm gonna do some writing about it, some TikToking, and yeah, I have 2 commission pieces, and then I wrote another piece that was out last week about this conservation park. So I'll be visiting the conservation park to do a follow up.
Is the conservation park piece, is it about like the conservation or is it about the people who work there?
Both, all of the above, and the power dynamics of conservation, um, and how this billionaire who actually funds Harvard Center for Human Rights, he funds one of the neighboring parks, and he talked to me extensively for the story about actually their sexual harassment policies, because there were claims that they weren't being followed. So I talked to him in depth about that. And and then I talked to a woman who's a lion conservationist and deals with endangered species. And she and her partner, who's a veterinarian, and they implemented this program to save lions who were getting accidentally snared. People were starving and they were putting down traps for warthogs and waterbuck and buffalo, and the lions were accidentally getting caught in the snare. So they were seeing these like gruesome images of lions like gnawing off their own paws and like 3-legged lionesses like hopping around and getting infected. Their wounds were getting infected. So they implemented this program to remove the snares, and they had to collar the lions to do that. So she did that within this park, but there were some issues with that she had with the governance and the leadership of the park, and just how women were treated and how locals were treated. And so she then left and now has set up in a neighboring park. She won this like tender from the government of Mozambique with a bunch of other organizations, and they're building like ways to better connect humans and elephants so that elephants aren't like trampling through human agricultural fields, and then they're like killing the elephants, and then the elephants are killing the people. And like it's just stuff we don't think about over here. So I guess we do, but not, I guess you're more in touch with the animal world on your farm, not elephants but other animals.
I had to watch a travel vet um, render our male pigs unable to procreate today. And this is graphic. Everybody who doesn't want to hear something graphic, click out now, right now. So like chit chatting, vet's doing her job, flips the pig over, and I'm expecting like a machine or something, just rips him off. And I literally, part of me died. And I was like, oh my God, no, we'll pay for the good way. Like, what are you doing? And she was like, no, this is better for clotting. This is the way to do it. This is the right way. And I was just like, so not ready. I was just like, oh, this is so great. The humane, we're going to, good for the pigs. They'll live longer. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Literally a very practiced movement.
I don't know. So that it's incredible to me the people who can do that. I'm just like, how? Yeah, and then she's probably done that hundreds of times.
Thousands. I saw thousands of repetitions of the flick of that wrist.
Oh my God. A poor pig. Maybe happy pig.
I mean, give it a couple weeks.
Wild.
All right.
All right.
The article you're working on, that's going to be on the Substack.
Yes, on the Substack, and I'll send you the article from the other week, the article about the power of conservation. I'll send you two: the power of the power dynamics in conservation, and the Pete Hegseth YouTube makeup tutorial.
So down below, everybody, we have the Pete Hegseth makeup tutorial. We've got the article that Ari mentioned. We also have Ari's Substack, which is always a good read. Listen, it used to be that all of Ari's best work was in the background for people. It's not anymore. It's on that Substack, and I think you really need to check it out.
Thanks, Vince.
Of course. Everybody, if this is helpful, like, subscribe, comment down below. This is our weekend show. Check out Ari's Substack, her journalism. It's tremendous. And I hope you're all having a great weekend.
All right. A pleasure. Have a great weekend.